Okay, next step in our KG 1.2 upgrade for our customer is we're going to remove this tweeter so that we can replace that with our new titanium diaphragm, the CD76TIM. I've already loosened these screws. We have 3 screws here. Now this tweeter is a little bit different than most of the others that we have the same diaphragm in, so the process is slightly different here. And I noticed that when I was taking these loose, this tweeter wants to lift up with the screws, so we want to occasionally be putting our finger here on the back to make sure that it doesn't move while we're loosening the screws. We'll take the 3 screws and we'll set them aside out of the way. And the way this is assembled, the horn remains attached to the motor board here, so we're going to lift straight up, and we want to maintain this orientation. So we want to keep this tweeter and diaphragm oriented the same way it is. So I'm going to just flip it over like this. Now we see our old diaphragm is a phenolic material. This is kind of like a plastic material here. Sometimes you'll find that this is a poly or a rubber material. And we'll take this old diaphragm assembly off, and it's this one does not seem to have, actually this one does seem to have some ferrofluid. We're going to leave it alone. Ferrofluid is very hard to clean out of the gap and probably doesn't need to be replaced. So we'll set this diaphragm aside. I'm going to lay this magnet assembly down, maintaining the orientation so I remember how it goes back on. I'll open up the new diaphragm. You can see that it's got this titanium dome. Resist the urge to touch the dome. It is shiny, but it will dent very easily. So we want to grab this by the plastic. You'll also notice there is a gasket here, this paper. It remains on the diaphragm. You do not need to remove that paper. So we're going to lay this on the magnet assembly in the same orientation that the other one was, very carefully. And there are some locator pins here that you can see that show through, and we're going to press down hard to ensure that this seats on those locator pins and it won't move. Now, we're going to very carefully, and I played with this a little bit beforehand just to make sure we don't want to dent this dome, so we're going to lay this straight down. My hands are going to be in the way, but the only way to make sure I don't damage that dome is to put it straight down. And as soon as it's back down, we're going to put our screws back in. I like to put these in my hand first just to make sure that they're not going to cross thread, and they should go in a thread or two very easily. And then we'll take our screwdriver, and probably best to use a hand screwdriver for this kind of thing instead of using a drill. Because we're screwing into plastic, the drill can put too much torque on the screw and cause it to break that plastic. So we want to use a hand screwdriver. And I'm going to go down snug, not real tight with each one. And you may notice the diaphragm drops a little bit as I tighten this. And so what we're going to do is tighten this last one to snug. And then I'm going to come back around and put just a little bit more torque on each one. I'm not putting a lot because, again, even your hand can break these plastic stands. And after we're done with that, next step would be to put the crossover back on, plug everything back in, and the diaphragm is replaced.